Janis Joplin was once the rebellious icon who shook America to its core in the late 60s with her raspy voice and wild, unapologetic lifestyle. She conquered everything from Woodstock to the hearts of true rock lovers. But few people know that behind the spotlight, Joplin lived a parallel life, one filled with pain, loneliness, and betrayal. How could a woman powerful enough to electrify the entire music scene end up dying in such heartbreaking solitude? The shocking secrets behind her sudden and shadowy death, hidden for decades, are finally being exposed, and you won't believe who pushed her to the very edge. Watch the video to uncover the full truth. Music. Janis Joplin was born in 1943 in the small town of Port Arthur, Texas, into a middle-class family with parents Dorothy and Seth. From a young age, it was clear that Janis was different from her siblings, a soul that stood apart in her own unmistakable way. Her childhood was far from peaceful. In Port Arthur, being different wasn't celebrated. In classrooms and on school grounds, she became the target of cruel teasing. Severe acne scarred her face. Her weight increased quickly, and harsh laughter echoed through the hallways every time she walked by. "I was an outcast," Janis once said, as if the entire town had never made space for someone like her. After graduating in 1960, Janis tried to follow a normal path by attending college in Texas. But things were no better there. The painful experiences repeated themselves, and the judgmental stares never went away. Eventually, in 1963, she made the boldest decision of her life: to abandon every expectation, leave Texas behind, and chase the call of music, where folk and blues became her only escape. Janis began building a new identity for herself. She let her hair grow wild and messy, wore rugged bohemian clothes, and drew inspiration from blues women and the rising beat movement. In December 1962, she recorded her first song, "What Good Can Drinkin' Do?" a raw, trembling track that sounded as fragile as her heart at the time. It was just the beginning, but it opened a powerful door. Janis's voice didn't sound like anyone else's. Then, in January 1963, she packed everything she owned, left Texas with her friend Chad Hensley, and headed to San Francisco. For Janis, this wasn't just a trip, it was an escape from pain. North Beach, vibrant and free, immediately felt like a place where she could breathe again. But freedom isn't always kind. San Francisco pulled her into a different whirlwind. Long nights, strange encounters, and an emptiness she tried to fill with alcohol, stimulants, and eventually heroin. In 1963, she was arrested for shoplifting, a small incident, but a warning sign of the storm to come. Over the next 2 years, her drug dependency spiraled frighteningly fast. Friends began calling her a speed freak. Methamphetamine wrecked her body, and the highs pulled her spirit further and further away from the light. Music. By 1965, the people who truly loved Janis were forced to do something they never wanted to: organize a fundraiser to bring her back to Texas. They knew that if they didn't pull her out immediately, they might lose her forever. When she stepped off the bus in Port Arthur, Janis weighed only 88 pounds, barely 40 kilos, a singing skeleton. Yet, in those tired, fading eyes, there was still a spark refusing to die. She quit drugs, stopped drinking, styled her hair into a traditional beehive, and enrolled in anthropology at Lamar University. And just when her old wounds hadn't fully healed, love arrived unexpectedly. In the fall of 1965, Janis became engaged to Peter DeBlanc, an IBM employee from New York. He was one of the rare people who made her feel valued. Peter even visited Janis's parents to ask for their blessing. a gesture she never believed she would experience. They began preparing for their wedding, as if life had finally decided to be gentle with her. But fate wasn't so soft. Peter's job required constant relocation, and one day he sent an apology. The engagement had to end. No argument. No chance to hold on. Just an ending. For someone who had been abandoned again and again her entire life, the blow was too deep, too sharp. Still, between 1965 and 1966, while Janis struggled to piece herself back together, she regularly met with a psychiatric social worker named Bernard Giaro in Beaumont, Texas. These sessions were part of a counseling program funded by the United Fund, known today as United Way. In interviews conducted after her death by biographer Myra Friedman, Giaro revealed the hidden corners of Janis's inner world. He shared a secret she never spoke out loud. According to him, Janis was always caught between two brutal forces: the burning desire to stand on stage as a true artist, and the paralyzing fear of falling back into addiction, the abyss she had barely escaped when she returned to Port Arthur. She wanted to live, to sing, to be heard by the world. Yet that fear, like a permanent shadow following her, threatened to erase every future she tried to claim. During this time, Janis told her parents she was going to Austin to join a rock band. But it was only a lie to ease their worries. The truth was that she had once again run away to San Francisco, a place where temptation and freedom crossed each other like the sharp edges of a blade. Her family was heartbroken. But in the midst of disappointment and blame, there was one person who stood firmly by her side: Seth Morgan. He didn't ask her to become someone else. He only tried to save her from addiction, to keep her sober for one more day, and then another. He succeeded, but only for a period so brief that no one could tell whether it was hope or just an illusion. In 1966, her band left San Francisco for Chicago, convinced that their future was finally taking shape. But within weeks, harsh reality shattered that dream. Their financial backer ran out of money, leaving the group stranded in a cold, sprawling city, and forcing them to sign with mainstream records under the worst possible circumstances. The recordings they hoped would save them only deepened their disappointment. They returned to San Francisco, not as triumphant dreamers, but as children carrying home a future that had already been torn apart. Yet somehow, life always left Janis a sliver of light. On July 31st, 1968, she made her first appearance on national television on the program This Morning. It should have been a glorious milestone for a rising underground artist. But just hours later, she learned the entire video had been accidentally erased by the technical crew, leaving only the audio behind, a lonely relic of a moment that had briefly made her shine. Then, in 1968, the real miracle came: Cheap Thrills. Big Brother and the holding company's first album under major label Columbia exploded like an earthquake. The album hit #1. Piece of My Heart became a raw, gravelly, aching scream of power, transforming Janis from an outsider into one of rock's newest icons. In every line she sang, audiences felt the wounds she never outran, the betrayals in love, the long stretches of loneliness, flashes of joy that vanished too fast, the pain she hid beneath alcohol, and that defiant, reckless laughter. But no amount of spotlight could chase away the demons still clinging to her life. Janis left Big Brother to form the Cosmic Blues Band, hoping for a clearer artistic direction. Yet even a fresh start couldn't pull her away from heroin, the intimate enemy she feared and depended on in equal measure. By early 1969, rumors said she was spending up to $200 a day on heroin, not counting the alcohol. as if she were gambling her life with every dose. While recording I Got Dem Ol' Cosmic Blues, Again Mama, producer Gabriel Meckler nearly became her guardian, bringing her into his Los Angeles home in hopes of keeping her away from drugs. But the addiction was stronger than anything, stronger than her friends, stronger than her will. Janis drifted endlessly between dazzling stages and a darkness she could never escape. And then came Woodstock, August 17, 1969. A dream venue for any artist. But for Janis, it became the crossroads of pressure and vulnerability. Backstage, she trembled uncontrollably with anxiety, turning to heroin and alcohol just to steady herself. When she walked out, the crowd screamed her name with wild devotion. Yet, despite that electric welcome, her performance was a painful misstep in her career. The voice that once roared like a storm was now raspy and fragile. Her once fiery dance moves blurred into unsteady steps, even standing beside Tina Turner, an icon impossible to overshadow. Janis couldn't hide the damage drugs were carving deeper and deeper into her life. Music. As the summer of 1970 drew to a close, Janis Joplin stepped onto a Bay Area stage with a strange feeling in her chest. Part farewell, part last note she was desperately trying to hold on to before life turned in another direction. That performance was more than music. It was a sigh, a quiet sadness, and the tiny sliver of hope she still carried. Shortly afterward, Janis left the United States for Brazil with her close friend Linda Gravenites. In Brazil's warm sunlight and slow, gentle rhythm, she met David Niehaus. He was an ordinary man full of compassion, untouched by the dazzling stage lights or the whirlwind of fame that surrounded Janis's name. It was that simplicity, that peace, that made her open her heart. For the first time in years, she felt a soft kind of happiness, one that didn't demand sacrifice or pain. With David, Janis quit drugs and stopped drinking, at least for a brief but precious moment. But beautiful dreams have limits. When she returned to America, Janis couldn't escape her old shadow. Dave watched helplessly as she slipped back toward the darkness he had tried so hard to pull her away from. Their love was a small boat caught in a violent sea. No matter how hard they tried, they couldn't fight the invisible force of addiction. Eventually, they let each other go, not because they stopped loving, but because they could no longer save one another. After David, Janis turned to Peggy Caserta, a passionate, rebellious woman who shared the same addiction. Their relationship was like pouring gasoline on an open flame. They spiraled together, loving and destroying, depending on each other while tearing each other apart. With Peggy, Janis was wild, alive, but also more fragile than ever. And still, in that chaos, Janis did what she did best. She stood up, sang, and fought for her music. In 1970, she formed the Full Tilt Boogie Band, people who understood her, loved music as fiercely as she did, and were ready to help her create something new. The concerts became explosive. Audiences adored her. Critics praised her fire. To the world, it looked like Janis was shining brighter than ever. But no one saw what happened backstage. The private battles with alcohol, the anxiety attacks that clawed at her when the lights went out. Her love life was a stormy ocean, sometimes calm, sometimes violent, sometimes full of hope, sometimes shattered in pain. Whether she loved men or women, Janis always came back to one brutal truth. Her loneliness was too deep for anyone to fill. Then came October 4th, 1970, a day that looked like any other. Yet, it became the day fate closed its hand. Janis Joplin was found lifeless on the cold tile floor of room 105 at the landmark Motor Inn. The world lost a voice whose every note burned with fire, and she was only 27. The autopsy showed she died of a heroin overdose, likely intensified by alcohol. Though ruled an accident, many still wonder, was there more to the story behind that door? Before she left this world, Janis poured her entire soul into the album Pearl, produced with Paul Rothchild. She never heard the finished record, but the world did. The world listened, loved, and grieved with her through every track. Me and Bobby McGee, Mercedes-Benz, all became part of her legacy, the final whisper of a heart that always wanted to love, always wanted to live, even as it was pushed to its breaking point. Janis Joplin is gone, but her music, fiery, raw, painfully honest, ensures we remember her as a shooting star, bright enough to hurt the eyes. If this story moved you, the next video is waiting for you right on the screen. Click it, and don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you there.